Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to Job Search Radio on webtalkradio.net. My Job Search Insider tip for this show is about salary negotiation. Frankly, I've run into a lot of situations recently where people have become emotionally involved in their salary negotiations way too much. They're thinking like $500 or $1,000 is life and death in their dealings, and lose sight of the fact that they may be gaining or losing something with an offer that's far more important. So, for example, some people are going to have an opportunity to work in areas with much lower taxes, or get home much more quickly and watch their families grow up, or spend time in the summer barbecuing. I don't know what dollar value you may put on that, but for some folks that's an important deal. So my encouragement to you is don't get caught up in raging about a lowball offer if there is one. Focus more on the total package of what the benefits are, what benefit you'll get out of it with your family, and, of course, take money into consideration as well. Kind of like in the Godfather movies, and I've always loved those movies, and I'm not going to go into why today, but I'll just simply say there's one line that I think is very worthwhile here, and that is, it's business. It's not personal. So that's my tip for this week. I want to introduce my guest, who's Gabe Heillig. Gabe is a writer and career coach who's won a nationwide RFP to open the only commercial resume firm ever given a lease to do business in the Pentagon. He's served the defense and intelligence community since 1993 and specializes in mid-career and executive-level resumes. He's helped over 5,300 professionals advancing their careers. Gabe, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on.
Jeff, thank you very much. Good to be here.
Thank you. So, Gabe, what's the most common mistake that you see people make with their resumes?
People suffer, and almost all of us suffer from this, from what I call resume blindness, where because the resumes we write are all about ourselves and everything that goes into it is information about ourselves, we tend to get lost in our own information. And we forget entirely that the resume is not for us. It's not a self-esteem instrument. It's not there to make us feel better about ourselves. It's for someone else who doesn't know us, more than likely, and the purpose of the resume is to help that person make a decision. And if you can think about it that way and sort of reverse engineer your approach to your resume, then I think you've got a much better chance of constructing a resume that doesn't have huge blind spots all over it.
You mean that people shouldn't bask in their own magnificence when they write this resume?
You and your grandmother can do that, but the guy
only if your grandmother's trying to hire you.
Exactly. You know, the person who's going to receive your resume is not interested in how wonderful you think you are. Believe me, people who do this, as you said a moment ago, this is business. This is not about how wonderful you are. This is about, do you have the experience and I would say the troubleshooting skills, because in this economy there's plenty of trouble. Do you have the troubleshooting skills that can help an employer solve the problems he's got? That's what your resume needs to be about.
And to demonstrate that in a reasonable length period of time, without going into too much detail, but enough to whet their appetite.
Yes, that's right.
What you would do, Gabe? Yeah.
Yes. That's exactly right. And many of the resumes that I see, Jeff, all tend to begin the same way, and it's very unfortunate. People will, the top third of the first page of the resume is the most important part of anybody's resume because it's the first place a stranger will look to see what's this guy all about. And what most people do, and I've seen thousands of homegrown attempts at resumes, what most people do is they have what they call a summary of qualifications, and they start praising themselves. Superior communication skills, excellent leadership skills. I've even seen people describe themselves as having visionary leadership skills. And
I saw that one this week too, Gabe.
Pardon me?
I saw another visionary this week as well.
In the military, that's become sort of the go-to word. Somebody solves a problem, he becomes a visionary leader. Well, it's like everybody's middle name is Isaiah. So, what many people do is they create this. They do two things. They start praising themselves as though someone else has never seen these words before: superior, excellent. And the problem, of course, is that everyone's resume tends to begin that way. So it's all a wash. It all adds up to nothing. And in the meantime, all you are doing is communicating your opinion of yourself, but you are not providing any evidence. There's no information whatsoever. It's just your opinion. And an employer understands, hey, of course this guy's going to think he's terrific, but I'm the guy who needs to decide how terrific he is, and he's not giving me any evidence. So when I write resumes for people, my approach is I will be very, very sparing in my use of adjectives to describe someone. In fact, I've even had clients who, when they look at their resume, they get this kind of glum look on their face. And I asked this fellow, what's the problem? He said, well, you didn't use any of those words. I said, well, what words are you talking about? He said, like excellent and superior. And so I had to explain to him what I'm trying to explain here, that you and your grandma can bask in your glow of how wonderful you believe you are, and you, in fact, may be wonderful. The problem is a stranger doesn't know that until you have convinced him, and simply saying it is not very convincing. My approach.
I'm a minimalist as well, Gabe. I like direct statements, pointed comments about role responsibilities, accomplishments, achievements, things along those lines, rather than those, every resume says these, every LinkedIn profile says these. Right. And once you start deleting those terms, the statements have far more power than with them.
Right. Plus, what I do is I'll make a few statements in boldface type, and I'll make statements, complete sentences, not just little phrases. I'll say perhaps, accomplished public speaker, okay? I'll make a claim, but I'll only make the claim if I can immediately, and I will, back it up with an example or a piece of evidence. So if I say about someone, frequent public speaker, then I'll back it up by saying, invited to deliver 6 keynote addresses to chambers of commerce around the country in the last 8 months. That's a piece of evidence that substantiates the claim. If I don't have the evidence, I don't make the claim, because no one's going to believe just the claim. Just like people, the other thing people do on the top third of their resume, and I saw this on someone's resume just the other day, he had a list of skills. People will list their skills. This guy had about 24 skills he listed. Well, unless you think you're Superman, it all tends to run together like a kid making a finger painting where he mushes all the colors together. If you want something to stand out, like red or brown or blue, you need to differentiate it from everything else. If you have a list of 18 skills, people can't put that together in their heads. And you have not provided any evidence. What I do is I try to show, I don't list the skills, I try to embed them in a little example so that the reader can see how the skill actually was used. That's what they want to know, is what can you do for me? Just telling me you're terrific at this, that, and the other thing doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't show me what kinds of problems you know how to solve, and therefore it doesn't give me any confidence that you can solve my problems.
And what you're talking about, Gabe, is so true. And I'll state the one exception about that skills list is the convention in IT is to have that skills list.
Right.
But in every other
those are named skills. I know C++, I know Oracle, whatever.
Right. And that's the one place where that convention makes sense, because the list is fairly long. And no one has the expectation that that person knows everything about everything listed there, but their expectation is if you're listing all the software that you have experience with, the early ones are the ones that you have your greatest strength with. And as you get later in the list, there's less capability. But every other place to have a list of 18, 20 things that you claim to be expert in, again, dilutes the message that you're trying to convey.
Yeah, it also raises, Jeff, another point, which is that you do not, in your resume, want to come across as Wonder Woman or Superman. And the reason is no one wants to hire Wonder Woman or Superman. And the reason for that is if I'm looking at your resume and I see Jeff Altman has done all this terrific stuff, and just it's like there's almost nothing in this field he hasn't done, and he's applying to me for a job, my response, I'm not going to tell him this, but inside my thinking is going to be, this guy is too strong. He's going to run right over me and grab the promotion I've been waiting to apply for. I'll let somebody else hire Superman. So what I try to do is to position my clients using a profile or a silhouette of this person is really a skilled troubleshooter. And here are the kinds of problems they have solved, the projects they have managed, the projects they have rescued when they were headed in the wrong direction. That's a skill that almost everyone wants to have on their corporate team. It's a little bit
Gabe, I know you do a lot of work for people who are either coming out of the military or have defense expertise. When you're speaking about that, are you referring to those people primarily, or is that true of the population at large?
Oh, I think that's a very transferable skill, and I can give you an example if you like.
I'd love that. Thank you.
Okay. I had a colonel come to me about 15 years ago in the Pentagon. His name was John, and he was an Army colonel. And if your listeners know about the military, if you get to be a colonel, someone has decided you've got really strong leadership skills, and they notice you early in your career, and they give you a whole gamut of assignments. You might be up on Capitol Hill for 2 years defending the Army's budget. Then you might be this Colonel John was, flying around Micronesia doing humanitarian relief operations for islands where typhoons had devastated the communities. So he came to me, I wrote up his resume, and I write resumes about results people have produced. I don't write about the job descriptions. I write about what they turned those jobs into by dint of their abilities and because of the nature of the problems that came along when they were in those assignments. So the very first job John applied for was to be the assistant general manager of a water district, a public utility near San Diego. And he had no background in this whatsoever. He was not a nautical or hydraulic engineer. He had never worked in a public utility. But
sounds like a perfect fit so far, Gabe.
There you go. But he spotted this ad in some journal of county and municipal employees with those quarter-page ads for jobs, and he sent out his resume. And he comes charging back into my office about 3.5 weeks later, says, Gabe, let me tell you what happened. So he pulls out the folder with this job in Vista, California, near San Diego. He says, they got 1,217 resumes for this job. He said, my resume made it to the final 15. And he and I looked at each other, Jeff, like, how did that happen? Because he had absolutely no technical qualifications to do this work whatsoever. But what he had was what any colonel would have, and what I'm sure many of your listeners have, which is the ability to solve problems and to produce effective results. And that's what his resume was about. And my speculation is that the people on the screening panel at this water district who were receiving resume after resume from managers of water districts and hydraulic engineers and so on probably decided, we've got all these resumes from guys who are great hydraulic engineers. This guy, he doesn't have any of that, but he can sure flat out manage. And they just found it impossible to throw his resume away. So the ability, the sheer ability to produce results in situations where results matter is itself a skill, and it's a skill that transcends almost any field. And I want to make a comment to your listeners about the word results, because on many people's resumes, Jeff, I see people using the word accomplishments. An accomplishment is qualitatively different and is understood to be different than a result.
I'm fascinated by this, Gabe. Please go into this. I appreciate it.
Okay, good. Because when somebody writes about, these are my accomplishments, they're talking about themselves. I did these wonderful things. And the employer is sitting there thinking, yeah, that's great. What can you do for me? I don't need somebody who does all kinds of accomplishments. That's personal. That's your personal accomplishment. That's nice, but what can you do for me? A result is different than an accomplishment. If I tell you I accomplished this and I accomplished that, that's all about me, what I did. If I tell you about a result I produced, that's about the organization I produced the result for. And that speaks to an employer, a prospective employer, because he can extrapolate, well, if he produced those results for these guys, he can probably produce some results for me.
So to clarify my confusion, because I am a little confused about the difference, and perhaps others will be as well. And I hear you say accomplishment is self-focused, results is entity-focused. If someone were saying increased sales by 23%, is that an accomplishment or a result?
It's both. But my point, you're asking exactly the right question, Jeff, because things that people list as their accomplishments are, in fact, often results they produced. But they don't, the context in which they're holding it is, this is me. This is what I produced. The context in which the reader, the prospective employer, is looking at this is, where are some results you can produce for me? I don't care about your accomplishments. It colors the whole thing differently. It's the same fact. I increased sales by 23%. But if you point it out as a result, the employer can relate to it.
So if, for example, someone starts off by describing the situation they walked into and then says increase sales by 23%, that gets perceived more as a result.
Yes.
Is that right?
But I wouldn't call it an accomplishment. It certainly is an accomplishment. But again, the resume is not for you. It doesn't actually matter whether you like your own resume or not, because it's not for you. It's for someone who's never met you, who has to make a very complex series of decisions. The boss has drafted a few people to read a pile of 731 resumes that just came in last Thursday. And out of those 731 resumes, maybe half a dozen people have to be interviewed. And so the people who are drafted for this assignment, and believe me, people are drafted for this. They don't volunteer. When the boss says, I need two or three people to read these 800 resumes, everybody looks away. Nobody wants to have eye contact with the boss at that moment, because this is a difficult thing to do. When people apply for jobs, usually they are qualified. And so the person with the decision to make has a very complex task. On the one hand, they have to deselect, and they will want to deselect as many resumes as rapidly as they can, just to cut down their workload and the number of people they can actively and effectively think about.
I'm going to pause you there 1 second.
Sure.
So folks, just recognize that the first step in the process is the process of elimination. Who seems to have done the poorest job in demonstrating their fit for a role, so we can easily eliminate them? For many of you, you call that the black hole. For me, most of the time, what that is you haven't done as strong a job as someone else in demonstrating that you can do this job. Now, Gabe, please continue.
Exactly right. Yeah, and in fact, I mean, you've hit on a really important point, because what people who are reading piles of resumes instinctively start doing is they start pigeonholing and stereotyping the people whose resumes they're looking at, and start stereotyping and pigeonholing them as quickly as they can, so that they can eliminate that person. Because at the beginning of the task, they're trying to just whittle down the pile to a manageable size that they can actually think about. People don't read resumes. They skip and they scan. Nobody reads a resume from the first word to the last word in order the way you would read a John Grisham thriller. This is like looking at a bunch of billboards on the highway. Some catch your attention, some do not. And all the studies that have been done by outplacement firms like Challenger and so on indicate that the average length of time a resume is initially looked at is somewhere about 10 to 12 seconds. That's not a lot of time to have your career and aspirations, being thought about by somebody. So something has to come off the page pretty quickly to capture someone's attention, and just yammering at them, saying, I'm great, look at my list of skills, that is not an effective way to do it, in part because that's what everybody else does. So if you do that, your resume looks like everybody else's, in which case it all turns to like marshmallow jam inside the reader's mind. It's all a big mush.
It is so true. And you speak about 10 to 12 seconds. I was away for 2 days at the end of last week at a conference and came back to over 500 emails in my inbox. I've yet to get through all of them because more keep coming in, and that's the predicament for a hiring manager as well. How much time can you really spend? And I know for myself, 6, 10 seconds, I'm just looking for something that vaguely fits what I'm looking for, and most resumes don't even do that. Even if I use that function in Microsoft Word, where you can use the drop-down and it says Edit, Find, and I'm looking for keywords in there. Mm-hmm. So often, I'm not even finding the keywords for a job. It's ridiculous. So yes, you're right. We're all doing quick scans of resumes to look for something that vaguely fits, and if we don't, delete. And then again, we're scanning 6, maybe 10 seconds, 15 tops, and then we move on to a different one.
Yeah, my way of going at it, Jeff, is I know that people who read piles of resumes are in a very rapid decision-making mode, and B, they are very skeptical and suspicious that everybody's trying to con them, inflate the verbiage, just use a lot of verbiage, not evidence. So what I do is I try to capture the reader's attention by making a declarative statement about my client's skills in some area, and then immediately back it up with a piece of evidence so that the reader begins to realize, hey, this guy's not conning me, he's not BSing me, he's actually showing me what he did. And he has a fair right to make a claim that he's an accomplished public speaker because, look, all these chambers of commerce have invited him to give speeches. And then I'll do that 2 or 3 times. And my intent is to take away from the resume screener their skepticism. So the first thing I'm trying to do is to weaken their skeptical posture and get them to at least a little bit trust what they're reading. That, hey, I actually did these things. Once they trust the resume even a little, they begin to have more respect for you because they know they're not feeling very trusting. And for you to get them to feel a little more trust, that's already an accomplishment. You've produced a result in their process. And so now they're going to get more engaged, and maybe they won't read it now. They might put it aside to read later, but at least you've gotten past first base.
Great tip. And just to be clear, in case my members of my audience are not grammarians, when you say a declarative statement, I think the easiest way to define that would be as a statement of what someone believes is a fact. So it's a direct statement about what you've done, and then you're backing that up with something that defines that in some way.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I'm trying to exemplify the statement by saying, look, here's how I have done that. And give it, the more concrete the details are in your resume, the more believable your resume becomes. If you say, I'm a great public speaker, nobody knows what that means. If you say, I gave 8 speeches in the last 6 months, luncheon speeches to chambers of commerce, that's very specific.
Very true. I want to see if you can offer a tip to the ex-military people who might be listening, or the veterans who might be listening, something that might be specifically geared for them, if there is something unique to that population.
Well, one trait that is widely misunderstood and underappreciated among veterans, not by them, but by civilians who would be considering to hire them, is that up and down the chain of command, even someone who's been in the service for 3 years, almost every soldier, airman, Marine, sailor has a strong work ethic, and is it's a culture of accountability. And so these guys and women are used to operating in fast-paced environments, and you can provide examples of that. They're used to dealing with multiple situations at the same time. Many of these guys would make terrific chief of staff or a work coordinator because they're often doing that in the military.
So the idea becomes to demonstrate those experiences that they've had in order to get someone who doesn't know, a civilian personality.
Right. I mean, the skills are transferable.
Of course.
Almost always. I mean, if you're a tank gunner, well, that's not a skill that's too transferable. Fortunately, we don't have too many tanks rumbling around the streets of Philadelphia and New York, but
thank goodness.
Many other skills are transferable. The ability to assign tasks to people and to make sure they get them done. If you're a sergeant, that's what you're doing all day long.
Beautiful. So I want to summarize some of the points that you've made here on today's show so that the audience gets it clearly summarized. And one thing you spoke about right off the bat was forgetting about the adjectives. No one except your grandma cares. Statements in boldface and then backing them up to talk about producing results. So you may make a statement about how you've given speeches and then you back it up with a supporting statement. The resumes are kind of like billboards on a highway to attract your attention, but they're not really the thing that gets you hired, of course. And I was about to repeat the declarative statement and backing it up with a supporting statement, but then the ones that you made very clearly for the military people are emphasizing the work ethic, the culture of accountability, the fast-paced environments that you've worked in. If you've been in roles where you've assigned tasks to people, coordinated their work, those are good points to emphasize in your civilian resume.
Yes.
Are there any other major items that I might have missed that you'd want to add in?
Well, boy, there's so much.
Just pick one more. How's that?
Let me just say this, that, Ernest Hemingway once made the comment, I think he made it many times. He said, I know all the big words. I just choose not to use them. And Hemingway was known for writing in clear, declarative, simple English in a very subtle and sophisticated way. What I try to do, I'm not Hemingway, but what I try to do in these resumes is not to use these long, jargony words, visionary leadership and all this stuff. I try to use simple English to describe actual events with concrete facts that lead or led to actual specific results. If you can do that, you can create an effective presentation of your skills. It's not about some secret mantras or power words. It's about you. And in fact, if you use simple, clear English, readers find that refreshing, because this whole process is about getting inside the thinking process of the person who's got to make a decision. Do we interview these 5 people or those 800? Who are we going to interview? They have a decision to make. It's a tough decision. And inside their minds, they're not thinking in polysyllabic words. They're thinking in little short words and shorthand, like, this ain't going to work. This guy, he's full of himself. That's how we all think. That's how readers think. So if you can present your information in a clear way and not rely on fancy words, but on actual facts, you will have taken a long step forward toward getting the vote of one of these screeners.
Beautiful. What a great way to encapsulate this interview. Gabe, how could someone reach you if they'd like you to work on their resume or for other types of coaching advice?
Sure. I actually do not, at this point, have a website, and I've done that quite deliberately because I would rather people call me or email me. This is a personal service. It's like asking someone to paint a portrait of your daughter. It's a personal service. It's not something you can just do with pixels flying around. I like to meet people or at least talk to them on the phone. I'll give you my phone number. My phone number is 240-247-0055. That's 240-247-0055. My email address is my name, Gabe, Gabe, at IDEADESIGN, Idea Design, as though it was one word. So it's Gabe at Idea Design, and then a hyphen, and then DC.com. Gabe, Gabe, at Idea Design, hyphen, DC.com. I answer my own phone, and I answer my emails.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gabe. Great show. And folks, we'll be back next time with more job search and hiring advice for all of you. This is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. If you'd like advice from me, if you'd like coaching from me, if you have a question about some element of job search, reach out to me through liveperson.com, where I'm a job search and career coaching expert. If you'd like to find more of the content that I've created, listen to other podcasts of my show, if you'd like to watch some of the videos I've done for YouTube, read articles I've written for No BS Job Search Advice e-zine, or for that matter, I'd like to receive a complimentary subscription to it, come over to my website, thebiggamehunter.us, and go exploring. There's just lots of great content